I'm going to put this take out there for Mike Evans, talk about him a little bit, but I really want to do this in I don't want to do this Mike Evans against every other receiver. I want to break down Mike Evans versus Chris Godwin here. And I'm really going to dig into Mike Evans, and I want to get your take as well on which one you'd rather have. Because right now, their ADP wide receiver 6 is Godwin, and ADP wide receiver 7 is Mike Evans. So it's like you're on the clock. If you're taking a Bucs receiver, take your choice of who you think is going to be better in 2020. But for me, it's Mike Evans. He has more proven consistency over time as an elite wide receiver. And he was 5th in fantasy points per game last season, and it feels like no one's talking about him at all. I feel like I haven't heard any Mike Evans hype all offseason. All I'm hearing is that Tom Brady can't get the ball downfield to him, and I'm like, that is garbage, and I'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
But Mike Evans literally 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons every single year of his career, 1,000 yards. His career fantasy finishes: wide receiver 15, wide receiver 9, wide receiver 17, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 23, and wide receiver 13. So he's a wide receiver 2 lock. That is his absolute floor, is around wide receiver 20. His upside is a top 3 wide receiver in this offense. And now the Bucs get Tom Brady. And I know people are thinking like, oh, Jameis Winston threw the ball 10 billion times last season, but he only threw it 13 more times than TB12 himself. So Tom Brady aired it out last year. His arm has still got enough juice to get the ball out 600 plus times. And the other narrative is like, oh, even if he throws it a lot, Godwin is going to eat because he's going to line up more in the slot and get all the underneath stuff. Tom Brady's not going to throw it downfield. Like, I'm not buying that narrative. Mike Evans last season, for reference, was 9th in the NFL in average depth of target with 15.1 as his average depth of target, which is ridiculous.
Wow.
And Brady just had no downfield targets last season. Like, who was he throwing it to? Julian Edelman and Jacoby Myers? Like Mohamed
Josh
Sanu.
Gordon for like 4 games.
Josh Gordon for like 2 games and 3 games, whatever. Yeah, maybe it was 4, whatever. But you go back to 2018, like erase last season. Go back to 2018, and Brady's average depth of target from the quarterback position was 7.9, which was higher than Andrew Luck, who everyone thinks of as a gunslinger, higher than Big Ben, higher than Phillip Rivers, higher than Dak Prescott. That was just 2 years ago when he actually had weapons. He had Josh Gordon. He had Gronk. So Brady's willing to throw the ball downfield when he's got someone who's actually good. But when all your receivers suck, what do they expect you to do? So, look, I think Brady is a huge upgrade to Mike Evans' situation. For me, Evans is a lock for 1,000 yards this season. If he ends up getting to double-digit touchdowns, maybe he pushes 12 or 14. He could easily be a top 5, top 3 wide receiver this year. And I'm willing to take that upside over Chris Godwin.
I do love that as a hot take, but I just don't see a world where Evans passes Godwin. Maybe from a deep target area, like more yardage for Evans, sure. But in terms of touchdowns and overall target share, I think Godwin's going to dominate. And everything that we like before last season, Arians came out and said we're going to use Godwin a ton and we're not going to take him off the field. Well, last year he was 96% snap share. 50% of that was from the slot, but that was number 9 across all wide receivers last year in terms of snaps played. And he had a 91.6% route participation, which was 4th overall in the league. He was 17th in targets, 23rd overall in deep targets. So was still getting some action down the field as well. Just, I kind of put them at a level playing field. Like, yes, Evans has an advantage in terms of like a 50-50 ball, go up and get it back in the end zone type of skill set. And Godwin kind of makes up for that in the, in and out, shorter routes, safety valves on slants and things like that. So it's tough for me to put Evans over Godwin. I love that as a hot take though. And I think it certainly could happen. But I love both of these guys this year, and you just laid out all the reasons. Like, Evans should not get faded. People are saying that, everybody loves Godwin and they're using that as a reason on its own to fade Mike Evans, and I just don't think that's a smart decision at all when you see that what these guys are doing on the field. And last thing I will say, Chris Godwin is insane from a yards after catch scenario. He was number 1 overall amongst wide receivers in yards after the catch, whereas, again, we're going to throw it up in a 50-50 ball for Mike Evans, and he's just going to come down with it. Hopefully that's a touchdown, and that's where he can kind of make his hay against Chris Godwin in this offense. But in terms of yardage on the season, like on the ground, on his own that he's creating, I expect Godwin to still be in the top tier when it comes to that category. But, I mean, honestly, man, I love both of these options.
Yeah.
I hate seeing the fades here on Mike Evans. I really
Absolutely.
do.
And I think that's maybe what I'm trying to instill is like stop fading Mike Evans. And we talk about upside. I know I said Evans has top 3 upside. Well, Godwin was the wide receiver 2 last year in 14 games. So both guys realistically could finish as the wide receiver 1 if the touchdowns go their way and things like that. And look, if I'm coming out of the draft and somehow, I don't think this would be the case because there's so many similar receivers up there at that ADP, but like if I have Godwin and Evans as my 2 receivers, probably not ideal because you're going to be a little bit boomer bust, but like, are you really mad about it? And I'm hyped this year to see, I mean, think about this on the goal line. You see some wacky motion where all of a sudden Gronk splits out to the left, Mike Evans splits out to the right, and you literally can't double the jump ball on the outside because if you double both sides, there's going to be wide open running room for Ronald Jones. Maybe Godwin is in the slot. Like, it's going to be impossible to guard this team in the red zone. It's going to be a ton of fun. And bottom line is, if you end up with Mike Evans or Chris Godwin as your wide receiver 1, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
I have to commend the Buccaneers for a number of reasons. I mean, one, like, Tom Brady knows what he's doing when he goes to the Buccaneers. He wants weapons. That's what he wants to do. I feel like he's going to Tampa not because they have they gave him some crazy deal, not because they have some massive market. They're one of the smallest teams in the league in terms of their like popularity and fandom. It's because he knows the weapons that they have, the coaching and the playbook that they have, and he's going to be able to go in there and make it a little bit of his own and dominate with it. And with that said too, the Bucs have really shored up every single aspect of their offense: short passing game, deep passing game, offensive line, running game. So I'm extremely excited for the Buccaneers. I think everybody is. Like, we're just hoping that everything works out this season and we get a full 16 games just so we can see Tampa Bay here in 2020.
We need it. And real quick, I just want to call out LaShawn McCoy for ring chasing because last year he goes to Kansas City, is kind of trash, and gets the ring. This year he just happens to go to Tampa Bay. What are the odds? And it's probably the only team that was willing to sign him. But still, it's like LaShawn McCoy, sneaky, shady McCoy could go back-to-back here with Super Bowls if the Buccaneers are able to do something special.